A century ago, the hills and valleys of this nation were tended by hundreds of thousands of shepherds. Today, that number has dwindled to a mere few thousand, a quiet, fading echo in an increasingly modernized world. Yet, within that silence lies one of the most profound and resilient stories of our time. This is not a eulogy for a dying way of life, but an intimate journey into a world where humanity, nature, and purpose converge. Welcome to the life of Elias, a third-generation shepherd whose days are not marked by clocks, but by the sun's arc and the season's turn. His is a world of unbreakable bonds, with the land that sustains him, the sheep that depend on him, and the dog who reads his very intentions. It's a life of breathtaking sunrises and relentless storms, of heartache and hope, isolation and deep community. This is the story of what it truly means to be a shepherd, not just a keeper of sheep, but a guardian of an ancient rhythm in a rapidly changing world. Come, walk these pastures with him, and discover the symphony hidden in the silence. The keeper of the flock Elias was Ashaferd, the third generation of his family to tend the flock on these particular acres. His life was a world away from the hustle of the city, defined instead by the turning seasons and the needs of his livestock. His role was not merely a job, it was a custodianship, a deeply ingrained responsibility passed down from his grandfather. He understood that sheep were more than just units of production. They were living, breathing creatures with distinct personalities and needs, and his purpose was to guide and protect them. This farming lifestyle was his inheritance and his passion, a direct link to a historical practice that had sustained rural communities for millennia. The unseen pressures modern shepherding is not the idyllic picture often painted. Elias faced a trifecta of relentless challenges. Erratic, changing weather patterns made ancient grazing knowledge less reliable, threatening both pasture quality and animal health. Economic pressures were a constant weight. The price he received for his wool and lamb often felt disconnected from the immense effort required to produce them. Even technology, while offering tools like weather apps and online markets, brought its own isolation and complexity, sometimes feeling at odds with the simplicity of outdoor living. The romantic vision of country living was often eclipsed by these harsh realities. The symphony begins each day for Elias began before the sun crested the hills. His alarm clock was the soft, expectant bleating of the flock from the lower pasture. Stepping out into the crisp morning air, the first sensory experience of his farm life was the smell of dew-damp grass and the distant, haunting call of a hawk. This was his symphony, the natural orchestra that accompanied his every move. He would breathe deeply, feeling a familiar sense of purpose settle over him. The land was waking up, and his work was about to begin, a daily ritual of care and connection that defined his very existence. The faithful partner Noshaford works alone. Elias's most crucial partner was Finn, a sharp-eyed, intelligent border collie. The bond between man and sheepdog was forged through years of mutual trust and understanding. With a series of whistles and commands, some spoken, some mere gestures, Elias could direct Finn to gather the flock, hold them steady, or cut a single ewe from the group. Finn was more than a working dog. He was an extension of Elias's own will, a blur of focused energy whose dedication to the flock was absolute. Their silent communication was a beautiful dance of animal husbandry. The morning inspection, the first task, was always the morning inspection. Elias moved slowly through the flock, his trained eye scanning for any sign of trouble. This was the cornerstone of effective animal care. He checked for lameness, looked for any sheep standing apart from the others, a classic sign of illness, and ensured the newborns were nursing properly. He knew each animal by sight, remembering their histories, which ewe was a stubborn leader, which lamb had been a difficult birth. This intimate knowledge was essential, a preventative measure that could avert larger crises down the line. The journey to pasture, once the flock was deemed healthy, the daily migration began. With Finn working the flanks, Elias led his sheep out of the night's paddock and towards the day's chosen grazing area. This was the heart of herding, a practice as old as farming itself. He guided them not with force, but with a gentle presence, allowing them to move at their own pace while ensuring they stayed on course. They moved like a slow, woolly river through the green valleys, a living testament to a timeless rural life. Elias walked among them, his staff in hand, a picture of quiet authority. The land as teacher. The land itself was Elias's sternest but greatest teacher. It had taught him patience during long, wet springs when the grass was slow to grow. It had taught him resilience during summer droughts when water became scarce. It taught him to read the subtle signs, the behavior of birds, the shift in the wind, the specific types of plants that thrived in different soils. This connection to nature was the bedrock of his sustainable farming practices. He wasn't just using the land. He was in a constant dialogue with it, learning how to work with its rhythms rather than against them. The weight of isolation, the physical demands of shepherding were immense, but the mental toll of isolation could be heavier. Days could pass without Elias speaking to another soul, his only conversations being with Finn and the sheep. This aspect of country living wasn't always the peaceful solitude it seemed from the outside. It required a strong, independent spirit to weather the loneliness that could settle over the hills like a fog. He missed spontaneous chats, the comfort of a nearby community, and sometimes felt a world away from the rapid pace of modern society. The community web. Despite the isolation, Elias was part of a fragile but vital web of rural life. He relied on his neighboring farmers, a network of men and women who understood the unique pressures he faced. They shared resources, offered advice over crackly phone lines, and lent a hand during the most demanding times like shearing or lambing. This sense of community was an unspoken insurance policy. They might live miles apart, but in times of need, the distance shrank, and the shared identity of their farming lifestyle brought them together as a chosen family. The threat of predators' vigilance was a constant requirement. The primary threat came from predators, foxes looking for an easy meal, or the ever-present shadow of birds of prey eyeing the newborn lambs. Elias's presence and Finn's alertness were the flock's main defenses. He maintained fences and sometimes used guardian animals, but the risk was always there. This aspect of animal care was primal, a reminder that his role as protector was a direct link to the first shepherds who guarded their flocks against wolves and big cats millennia ago. The art of shearing once a year, the peaceful rhythm was broken by the intense, bustling activity of shearing. It was a community event, where shearers traveled from farm to farm, their skilled hands removing the heavy winter wool from each sheep in minutes. The air would fill with the sound of bleating sheep, buzzing clippers, and the laughter and shared stories of the gathered helpers. For Elias, it was a culmination of a year's work, the transformation of his care into a tangible product, the valuable wool that was the primary economic driver of his homesteading operation. The cycle of life, the most demanding and rewarding time, was lambing season. 4 weeks, Elias's life revolved around the maternity ward of his barn and pastures. He spent sleepless nights monitoring pregnant ewes, assisting with difficult births, and ensuring newborns took their first vital feed. It was a period of high anxiety but also profound joy. Witnessing the miracle of new life, seeing the lambs take their first wobbly steps and begin to frolic, reinforced his deep connection to the cycle of life that is central to animal husbandry. The sustainable ethos. Elias practiced a form of sustainable farming learned from his father. He practiced rotational grazing, moving the flock frequently to prevent overgrazing and allow pastures to recover. This nurtured the soil health and promoted biodiversity, ensuring the land would remain productive for future generations. His approach was a quiet rebellion against industrial agriculture, a choice to work in harmony with nature rather than dominate it. For him, sustainability wasn't a trendy word. It was simply the only way he knew how to be a good shepherd of the land. The economic struggle, the financial reality of his life, was a constant tightrope walk. The costs of feed, veterinary care, and equipment maintenance were high and ever-increasing. Yet, the prices paid for his wool and meat were often depressingly low, set by volatile global markets far removed from his hills. Making a profit from his livestock was one of his greatest challenges. He had to be a businessman, a veterinarian, a laborer, and a meteorologist all at once, and the economic pressure was a cloud that never fully dissipated. The innovator's spirit to adapt, Elias had begun to innovate. He explored direct-to-consumer sales, selling wool yarn and meat directly to families who valued knowing the source of their products. He documented his life online, sharing his story and creating a small but dedicated following. This modern twist on homesteading helped bridge the gap between his isolated rural life and the consumers who benefited from his work. It was a way to educate others about the true cost of food and the value of supporting local, ethical agriculture. The gathering storm one afternoon, the weather turned with frightening speed. The sky, previously a soft blue, deepened to a bruised purple. The wind, once a gentle breeze, began to howl, whipping across the hillsides. The barometric pressure dropped sharply. Elias felt the change in his bones, a deep, old knowledge warning of impending danger. This wasn't a typical summer shower. This was the kind of storm that could devastate an unprepared flock. A sense of dread, cold and sharp, cut through his usual calm. The test of resolve, he and Finn worked frantically to drive the flock from the exposed high pastures down toward the relative shelter of the stone barn in the valley. The sheep, sensing the storm, became skittish and uncooperative. Rain began to fall, not in drops but in sheets, stinging his face and reducing visibility to mere feet. The wind roared, making it impossible to hear his own shouts or Finn's barks. This was the ultimate test of his resolve, a brutal confrontation with the uncontrollable power of nature that defined the hardest aspects of outdoor living. The loss, despite his desperate efforts, the storm's fury was overwhelming. In the chaos and blinding rain, a small group of ewes, panicked by a close crack of lightning, broke away from the main flock and scattered into the wooded copse. Elias, prioritizing the safety of the majority, had to make the heartbreaking choice to get the main flock to shelter and hope the others would find their way. The following morning's calm revealed the cost. 2 ewes were lost, found trapped and drowned in a swollen creek. The loss was a physical blow. The reflection, grieving and exhausted, Elias sat on his porch that evening, the setting sun a stark contrast to the violence of the previous night. He questioned everything, his choices, his vocation, his ability to be the protector he vowed to be. The storm had laid bare the vulnerability of his chosen life. It wasn't just about lost income, it was a failure of his core duty. The peaceful farming lifestyle felt like a lie, masking a reality of brutal loss and immense responsibility that sometimes felt too heavy to bear. The community rallies the next day. His neighbors arrived without being called. They brought food, but more importantly, they brought their presence and shared experience. They shared their own stories of loss from past storms, of lost animals, damaged crops, and shattered equipment. Their solidarity didn't erase the loss, but it normalized it. They reminded him that he wasn't alone in this struggle, that every farmer and shepherd on these hills had faced similar tragedies. This was the true strength of their rural life community. A new perspective, their support sparked a shift in his perspective. The storm, while devastating, was not a failure to be dwelled upon, but a harsh lesson to be learned. It taught him a deeper level of respect for the raw power of the land he loved. It reinforced the necessity of community and the importance of preparing for the unpredictable. He began to see his role not just as managing the flock in good times, but as building resilience for the inevitable bad times. His grief began to transform into a steely determination. Rebuilding and adapting in the weeks that followed, Elias channeled his energy into adaptation. He improved the drainage around the lower pastures. He identified new, more accessible shelter areas and marked emergency routes. He invested in a better emergency alert weather radio. The tragedy became a catalyst for positive change, making his operation stronger and more resilient. This proactive approach was the essence of modern sustainable farming, learning from the land itself and adapting practices to ensure survival and longevity. The simple joys weeks later, watching a group of lambs, including one born just after the storm, frolic without a care in the world, Elias felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The warmth of the sun on his back, the contented sounds of the grazing flock, and the unwavering loyalty of Finn by his side. These were the simple joys that defined his life. The balance between hardship and joy was the true rhythm of a shepherd's existence. It was a life of deep meaning, found not in material wealth, but in these pure, unscripted moments. The evening ritual, as the sun began its descent each evening, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Elias would bring the flock back to their home paddock. The evening ritual was a mirror of the morning, but slower, more peaceful. He would count them as they passed through the gate, a final check to ensure all were safe and accounted for. The symphony of the day softened to a lullaby, the gentle bleats, the rustling of settling bodies, the first chirps of the crickets. A life of gratitude standing at the fence line, Elias felt a surge of gratitude. Gratitude for the land that provided, for the animals in his care, for the community that supported him, and even for the challenges that made him stronger. This homesteading life was a choice he made every single day, and despite the struggles, he wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a life that demanded everything he had but gave back a sense of purpose that was increasingly rare in the modern world. The vital role Elias's story is a microcosm of a profession that remains utterly vital. Shepherds are the stewards of the landscape, managing the land in a way that promotes biodiversity and soil health. They are the providers of high-quality, ethical wool and meat. They are the keepers of ancient traditions and a repository of knowledge about animal husbandry and the natural world. Their continued existence is crucial for the health of rural life and a sustainable agricultural future. The unfolding story. So, what is it really like to be a shepherd? It is a life of profound contradiction. It is both incredibly simple and immensely complex. It is filled with moments of breathtaking peace and episodes of sheer terror. It is a vocation of backbreaking labor that yields spiritual riches. It is a life where every day is the same, yet every day holds a new story waiting to unfold. It is a symphony composed of wind, rain, bleating sheep, and the steady heartbeat of the land. A connection remembered for those of us who live far from this reality. The shepherd's life offers a poignant reminder of our fundamental connection to the earth and the origins of our food and fiber. It challenges the modern pace of life, suggesting that fulfillment might be found not in more, but in less, in deep connection, responsibility, and the quiet satisfaction of a day's honest work. It is a farming lifestyle that demands respect and recognition. Your thoughts. The life of a shepherd is a challenging yet deeply fulfilling journey, a testament to human resilience and our bond with nature. If this glimpse into their world has resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. What aspect of the shepherd's daily routine surprised you most? Have you ever experienced a taste of country living? Share your reflections in the comments below. And if you're curious about other traditional ways of life, be sure to check out my next video where I explore the day in the life of a beekeeper. The sun dips below the hills once more, casting long shadows that blend flock and field into a single, breathing entity. The day's symphony, the bleating of sheep, the whisper of wind, the distant whistle to a loyal dog, fades into a contented silence. Elias stands at his fence line, not as a solitary figure, but as a vital note in an enduring song. His story is but one verse in the ancient and ongoing ballad of the land. He is a keeper of something far greater than livestock. He is a steward of legacy, a guardian of a rhythm that modern life has nearly forgotten. The challenges, the economic strains, the isolation, the brutal whims of nature are real and unrelenting. Yet, they are met each day with a resilience woven from patience, knowledge, and an unwavering sense of duty. This life does not offer riches, but rather a wealth measured in the warmth of the sun on your back, the trust in a sheepdog's eyes, and the profound satisfaction of guiding your flock safely home. Elias's footsteps may eventually fade from these particular fields, but the path he walks is eternal. For as long as there are hills to climb and dawns to greet, there will be those who feel the call, to nurture, to protect, to belong to the land so completely that their own heartbeat syncs with the turning of the seasons. The echo of the shepherd may be quieter now, but it is far from silent. It persists in every stitch of wool, every blade of grass nurtured by careful stewardship, and in the enduring truth that a life lived in deep connection is a life truly lived. It is a choice to listen to the earth's oldest song, and to add your own voice to its chorus. Elias's story is a powerful reminder of the deep roots that connect us to our food, our land, and to traditions that shape our world. The life of a shepherd is built on community, and that now includes you. We'd love to hear from you. Times what surprised you most about a shepherd's daily life? Times could you ever see yourself embracing a lifestyle like this? Times do you have a story about a farmer or shepherd in your own life? Join our community by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon. Your support helps us travel to more farms, meet more incredible people, and share the stories that often go untold. Help us spread the word by sharing this video with your friends. Let's work together to shine a light on the vital work of those who tend the land.